Now, these changes that Tom has made to his Tron deck, they all seem to be giving points back to Hunter Nance. You see things like
paying 4 life to dismember is a lot worse than casting Path to
Relic
Exile.
of Progenitus, not thrilled about all those. Even cards like Wormcoil Engine, which is a 4 of as Tom's finisher, that is an engine that Merfolk can deal with quite easily.
Vapor Snag, Spreading Seas plus Landwalking Lord.
Yeah, tap it with a Regery.
Yep.
So, both players on 6-card hands, as I mentioned. Hunter, though, will undo the mulligan. His turn 2 play is Silvergill Adept.
That's the MVP for the Merfolk deck.
Yeah.
Always replaces itself.
For Tom, he will have a turn 3 Tron on the here on the draw. 2 Tron pieces and a map were his plays. And Hunter pays some respect to that. He, rather than making a card like Lord of Atlantis, he uses Spreading Seas on Tom's Urza's Tower and draws a card. Actually didn't have the option, no third land for Hunter here. Let's see if he had... This is actually going to be a problem as he has Mutavault and Island, so cards like the Lord of Atlantis in his hand aren't actually castable yet.
There's a little temptation to try to get fancy in some spots and Spreading Seas your own Mutavault, but against Tron, hitting their land types, that matters way more.
Yeah, you see Tom's going to go ahead and get the 3rd Tron piece anyway with the map. So... And this is one of the things about the traditional Tron builds as opposed to Eldrazi Tron. It is very hard to slow them down. They will eventually assemble Tron. You see on Tom's turn, he played Urza's Mine, then went and cast another Expedition map.
Tom really quick to set up, but Hunter has another Spreading Seas here. It's going to push Tom a little bit further back.
Yeah, these Spreading Seas would actually be very relevant were it not for the fact that Hunter's missing his land drops. He's only getting 2 damage for each of these seas.
Right. If he had something like a 3rd land drop, preferably a blue source, or a turn 1 Ether Vial, he'd be in a much better spot. Currently, Tom's still at 16.
Yeah, he went and got Urza's Tower off that 2nd map. Now Hunter, he flipped the coin and it landed the way he wanted to. Last turn he could have picked Urza's Mine or Power Plant. He Spreading Seased the Mine, and for turn, Tom drew a Power Plant.
Though, bit of an unfortunate swing back as Tom has picked up an Oblivion Stone.
Yeah, his plays Oblivion Stone and Chromatic Star. Now, as long as Tom has any 5th land, this Oblivion Stone sets up very nicely.
Yeah, you just activate it for 5, destroy all non-land permanents without fate counters. You're not going to see any of those put on, I imagine, in this game. That's going to remove the creatures that Hunter has and the Spreading Seas.
Right, so if he does that on end step, Tom is going to untap with, it looks to be 11 mana for the following turn. And even if he blows up his Chromatic Star, he'll actually still draw a card.
Yep. Yeah, this is not like Chromatic Sphere has to use the mana ability to draw. The star will always replace itself no matter how it's destroyed.
So a swing from the Silver Adept from Hunter, and then a Curse Catcher. It looks like he's banking on Tom not having another land.
It can make another creature in here. Not ideal, but again, there's not a lot else that Hunter can realistically do.
And I actually do like the play from Hunter. What it's saying is he really he's not going to beat the Oblivion Stone if Tom has the land. And Tom cracks the star and making green mana. Actually, he doesn't even need the Oblivion Stone. He just had Tron again in his hand. He'll cast Worldbreaker.
Yeah, and Tron's definitely one of those decks where you don't just need Disruption, you also need a faster clock. A 2-1 for 2 is not going to do it.
Yeah, he exiles Hunter's island. Hunter still has no blue mana. He has a Dismember as the only castable card. 7 cards in hand. It looks like he's missed that land drop for just too long here.
Yep, and Dismember, castable, not desirable. You can get the Worldbreaker off the battlefield, but that doesn't even solve the Worldbreaker problem permanently. Tom can start sacrificing lands to get that back out of his graveyard.
Sure.
Not to mention that Tom still has a hand full of other cards. Likely some other action there. In this stage, it's going to be really difficult for Hunter to beat a Wormcoil Engine, for example. Ugin the Spirit Dragon, Karn Liberator, this stuff is all really powerful on a battlefield like this. Not to mention Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, 2 copies in Tom Ross's deck. Of course, that one's pretty much sliced out against anybody at any stage of the game.
Yeah, Hunter having to discards a copy of Master of Waves. This one mostly should be tied up for Tom. You can see how he chooses to end it. He's at 12, but now he gets to play the game with 5 mana and an Oblivion Stone there as an insurance policy. That should be good enough. As you see, Ancient Stirrings finds him a copy of Wormcoil Engine.
Yep. You saw in the previous turn, Hunter attacked his Adept into the Worldbreaker. The Dismember could technically make that individual combat step favorable, but in the long term, it's really not worth much. You see Tom just takes the 2 damage, still at 12 life.
Yeah, and Hunter can't make that play against Wormcoil Engine either.
Right.
And it looks like Tom going toward Karn Liberated, going to get that last land away from Hunter.
This is always a really big feel-bad playing against Tron. Your opponent shows you that they have just drawn Wormcoil Engine.
And then play something else. Yeah. And I'll take Hunter's last land and untap. There's a Cavern of Souls. This is going to be late. He'll keep playing, though. Silvergill Adept is going to swing. See if it's at Karn or at Tom. I don't think it's going to matter much to him.
Right. Yeah, that Cavern is very late to the party. You can cast that Dismember to try to force slightly awkward combat for Tom.
And that's what it'll do. It will block. So Dismember and... Well, Dismember will trade with the Worldbreaker. Because the Worldbreaker goes down to a 0-2, the Silvergill Adept actually lives here. And now Karn will plus up. Still a Wormcoil Engine in Tom's hand. Worldbreaker in the yard is not keen to stay there. Plenty of colorless mana for Tom Ross.
This is a sign that Tom's in a great position. He didn't need to use Karn to double Vindicate. He just started able to plus it on this turn. Now he has access to 2 more and the ability to maintain the Karn beyond that.
Now Karn will just get to stick around. And now Fate counters will start to be placed by Tom Ross. So you see Karn picking up a Fate counter. Even if Oblivion Stone is sacrificed, Karn will stick around as it goes back at Hunter's lands. Cavern of Souls now exiled.
Yeah, Hunter was having enough difficulty with the spells he was able to cast. He's just out of the game now.
It shows he did have, interestingly, his hand, he picked up Spreading Seas 3 and 4. What I think is interesting here, based on how he saw that game, when you think of a card of Spreading Seas out of Hunter's deck, it's more of a tempo card, I'd think. You know, you saw Hunter with a full set of Spreading Seas. He can't keep Tom off Tron indefinitely. It seemed like every time he cast a Spreading Seas, it was just dealing 2 damage. And it was saying, okay, Tom's going to have to take 1 more turn off, or 1 more turn after that off.
Yeah, the mana woes that he was experiencing didn't really enable him to leverage the tempo swings he was generating. Technically cut Tom off of some mana, but Hunter was just naturally off of mana.
All right, so for Tom Ross, 2-0, winning the first 2 rounds. He's up a game right now with Mono Green Tron, a player who really the last 3 years on the SCG Tour has been nothing short of dominant. We saw he was the first player to win 2 invitationals in the same season, and did that the season 2 and 3. That was back in 2014. Since then, he's qualified for all the Players' Championships as well. And especially with Modern coming onto the SCG Tour, this has really showed Tom's diversity. When he originally won some of his opens, they were, it was Infect and it was Boss Sly, a mono red deck. We thought Tom was great in decks where it was pump spells and 1-drops, but now with Modern, we're seeing has so much more range than we ever thought.
Very excellent Modern player, not to mention the exceptional Standard player as well, winning back-to-back Standard Opens within the last year. Yeah, dominant is exactly right. Tom is not the player you want sitting across from you in Modern or Standard. Yeah,
and you see here for the 33-year-old now living here in Roanoke, 16 Open top 8s, 4 Invitational top 8s with 2 wins. What is just impressive about this is these are all acquired in the last 4 years. So these stats, first of all, already plays him among the top 10 players on the tour. I think if you were to look at best stats in the last, in the last 4 years, Tom's likely in first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a great start here, looking for that 5th Invitational top 8. And you see these conversion rates: 16 Open top 8s, 5 wins. So he's winning almost a third of his Opens. He's winning of his top 8s. He's winning half his Invitational top 8s. All those rates are fantastic.
Yeah.
So I want to look at the sideboards here. Both these decks as monocolored decks, they're medium at sideboarding. I guess on Tom's side, he's got 4 copies of Warping Whale, 4 copies of Nature's Claim, 3 copies of Thrag Tusk, and then a set of 1-ofs: an Ancient Grudge, a Gemstone Caverns, a Grafdigger's Cage, and a Relic of Progenitus. Nothing jumps off the page to me here as good against Merfolk.
Right, he has an assortment of cards that are fine. Nature's Claim, Ancient Grudge, you can blow up things like Spreading Seas, Ether Vial, what have you. They're okay.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it's worth the card to bring it in. Now he knows he's going to be on the draw. I suppose he could use Gemstone Caverns. This doesn't feel like that kind of matchup, though.
No. Your opponent is spreading seizing you off a Tron. That's something. You get a little bit of mana a little bit faster, but it doesn't seem to be a difference maker in a matchup like this. It's possible you just bring it in every time you're on the draw. It's a fine card.
Yeah, that's an interesting card. We see it indexed from time to time. A lot of times you see it when there's a slow deck that really is struggling in its combo matchup. They'll board this in. You know, it's like in matchups where you are 1.5 turn, when you're more than 1 turn slower than your opponent, which sometimes Tron is. When you lose the die roll, then you become 2 turns slower, and then you need to steal the die roll back somehow.
Yeah. And he is playing Dismember in his mono green deck. This is a black source if he has it in his opener that can take a little bit of pressure off of casting that spell.
So for Hunter, he has 3 Tidebinder Mage, 2 copies of Dispel, 2 Relic of Progenitus, 2 Threads of Disloyalty, 1 Dismember. Thanks for staying with us there. 1 Echoing Truth, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, and 1 Negate.
Unified Will, Negate. Those are the big highlights here. You can bring in Echoing Truth. That one's totally reasonable as well. All 4 of those cards seem totally reasonable. He has that main deck Dismember he has to get out. Probably doesn't want to be heavy on Vapor Snag and post-sideboard games as well. But the big hits here are just counter spells. Stop Tom from casting these big spells and stay ahead.
All right, let's take this. We're having a technical difficulty here for a second. We'll get you to the match as soon as we can.
And for the post-sideboard games, the Merfolk strategy definitely involves just getting ahead and staying ahead, really like it does in any other matchup. So it's going to be about using Spreading Seas to tax Tom's lands, getting some counter spells to keep him behind, getting some creatures on the battlefield.
All right, so we need to, so the match here, game 2 here did start. We're going to pause it for a second as we go ahead and get the camera set up for it. Hunter winning the die roll, both players keeping, well, on the play, both players keeping their 7s. For Hunter, it was a curve of Curse Catcher into Silvergill Adept. For Tom Ross, it looks like we just have Chromatic Sphere on turn 1. And nothing on turn 2. Looks like we are here on Hunter's turn 3. And now we are good. Okay, so a swing puts Tom to 16. Another Silvergill Adept shows Marrow Reejery, and Hunter does find the 3rd land off it. He'll add Curse Catcher.
Hunter doing a lot better than he did in the first game. Tom also not presenting Tron land after Tron land.
Well, this was actually close. It looks here that, you know, had that Adept not found an island, Hunter did not have the 3rd land. But you're right, here he has 3 Merfolk into a Lord, or 4 Merfolk into Lord. That's great. You see Tom going for Dismember. And how do you feel about this? You know, we talk about the fact that Tom has no splashes. You know, back when Merfolk was a popular deck, the most popular build of Tron was red-green Tron. And the red was because they played 4 copies of Pyroclasm in the main. It feels to me on this game that Tom wishes his deck still had something like that.
Yeah, he does only play the 1 Grove of the Burn Willows. The upside of that, you have some psychological warfare going on. Your opponent might put you on having some red cards. It's also a tutor target against a Death Shadow player that gets a little aggressive.
Yeah. Well, here's a swing here from Hunter. He did have Marrow Reejery, but decides not to commit it as he swings for 9.
And the cards he's got to be worried about are things like those sweepers, Pyroclasm. It's not going to help him there.
I actually think this is a really smart play from Hunter, because if Tom takes 5, it's all about clock. How many turn attacks does Hunter need to make it lethal? Dismember from Tom Ross. Again, puts him to 10. Hunter will Vapor Snag his own Adept in response.
Yeah, showing some versatility there. The snag likely in the deck to deal with any resolved Wormcoil Engine. Well, Tom has 1 Tron land. He's pretty far away from casting that.
He'll recast the Adept and say go, no 4th land. Tom down to 7 on the attack, and this is exactly why I like Hunter's play. With the Reejery in hand, he hasn't given away any clock here. Yeah, Tom's at 7 with just 1 Grove of the Burn Willows up. Hunter has a Curse Catcher. That should likely cover anything Tom Ross could have in hand. A Reejery would put Tom to 1. We'll see if Hunter Nance pulls the trigger.
Yeah, if he has to use the Curse Catcher, he doesn't have lethal this turn, but that also means that Tom just has that spot removal spell. Going for lethal makes a lot of sense here.
Master of the Pearl Trident. Here's a swing, and Tom will pick up the cards. What I like is that Hunter can, so if Tom has some sort of removal spell, maybe a lightning bolt, right? It would get countered, and Hunter would go to, or Tom would go to 1. All it takes then for Hunter to win is a Mutavault or a Vapor Snag, and then he's probably fine.
And Tom casting multiple Dismembers in that game, it suggests that something is up with the removal spells there. That was not a super high priority.
Yeah, you're not, if you're in Hunter's seat, you're respecting Pyroclasm way less than I think in Game 3 you've lost respect for that card.
Right. Yeah, it's clear that this build is a little bit off of what you would normally see.
Yeah, I mean, in a deck that had cards like Clasm, do you think you'd even see multiple Dismembers in the game, in the deck post-board?
Yeah, no. You frequently would see Lightning Bolt in those kinds of builds, and that's just as good in this matchup. Realistically better, because it'll never cost you life, and it'll always kill most things.
Right. So a quick comeback win here for Hunter Nance. Hunter Nance was a player in our second Players' Championship. The 23-year-old from Raleigh, North Carolina, has 3 open top 8s. He's still looking for his first win, though, on the SCG Tour. We see a lot of good finishes, him alongside teammate Collins Mullen. Both of them really, I think, are on the verge of breaking through on the tour.
Apparently an aficionado on orange-colored dipping sauce, a pretty niche skill.
I actually like this. He had, and I didn't know about this until right now, that he had written a guide on ordering strategies at Cookout. Now, yesterday was the first time I have gone to Cookout since I've been here in Roanoke, Virginia. I believe that's true of you as well.
Yes.
I think we probably could have used a strategy guide.
It is probably true that my Cookout order was not optimized. It is also more likely true that spending time optimizing my Cookout order is not an optimized use of my time. So this goes pretty deep.
Okay.
There's a lot of things to consider.
That's recursive here. So you're right. We get the complexity level here. is gonna.
On its face, I made a low-level mistake.
Right. I could see that. Hunter, though, taking a second game here, playing into Clasm and very much rewarded for it, as Tom's deck doesn't actually have it.
Right. The Grove of the Burn Willows, that has to give you a little bit of pause.
I would think so, right? If you're going to play an entire board of X1s, I'm concerned.
He did have the benefit of drawing multiple Curse Catchers, which makes it pretty difficult to execute with Pyroclasm or Fire Spout.
All right, well, they're going to have a third game in just a second. Tom Ross will be back on the play. Now, for those of you who do love Modern, and we like it over here on the SCG Tour, we have, now over at Star City Game Store, we have the Tarmo die. You've seen these. On coverage, we use our die to keep track of our Tarmogoyf size, and now you can do the same at home. This is available in both a single die, in case you want to use one for all your Tarmogoyfs, or in sets of 4, if you want one for each Tarmogoyf that's in play. Those are now available for sale on the SCG Store, so it's starcitygames.com/Tarmo die.
One for you, one for 3 of your friends. A little magic party, a little party favor.
And you might ask, but a Tarmogoyf can have 9 different sizes. How does an 8-sided die work? No one wants to put a die on their 0-1 Tarmogoyf. That's just... if it's a 0-1, I don't want to know. You ever gotten a Tarmogoyf up to an 8-9? I've seen it happen on coverage.
So the hard card types are generally going to be tribal, enchantment. Those are really the ones you're
I always think about
for.
There's the easy 4, which we see a lot, which is creature, land, instant sorcery.
Yep. Most of my Tarmogoyfs are 4/5s. They usually get to 5 because of what my opponent is doing.
Right. So then the bonus ones, the hard ones, are artifact, enchantment, tribal, planeswalker.
I can't imagine a situation where I would have ever had an 8/9 Tarmogoyf. And I've been casting Tarmogoyf since before there were actually planeswalkers. This is something that you might not know if you're newer to the game. Tarmogoyf was printed with reminder text that referenced planeswalkers before those cards actually existed.
Right. So like, what's a planeswalker?
This is tribal as well.
Yeah. This is.
Or no, there was tribals in Future Sight. Like there was this rebel pacifism card.
Future Sight just asked so many questions.
Yeah. Tribal was a card type that they unsurprisingly abandoned. Not very popular among players or developers of the game.
You know, and we never saw the set built around Aura Swap either.
Apparently, Mark Rosewater recently did a podcast about why the I'm going to botch the pronunciation. Miraganda petroglyphs, whatever that is. You're never going to see the vanilla set.
The all vanilla card
It's
set?
very
Yeah.
bad design space. So if you're hoping that that one's going to get a reprint, not likely.
Yeah, well, the idea of the set was that these are cards from Magic's future. And for a while, we actually did see that. Boldweir Intimidator turned out to be from Lorwyn.
I'm still waiting for the Nimbus Maze cycle, if I'm being entirely honest.
That
Those are
one
some
was
good
what was the good one? It
dual
was the black-blue one, River of Tears. That one was
Yeah.
actually good.
That one's it's at its best as a blue-black land. That's kind of how they designed that cycle.
Well, it's basically what? It's an island that landfall turns into a swamp.
yeah. Blue-white Horizon Canopy would be mighty nice.
Once you start giving Horizon Canopy, I think you're not thinking big enough. It's red decks that want Horizon
Red-black
Canopy.
Horizon Canopy is
Yeah,
really powerful.
I want
red-green.
How many Horizon Canopies, if they made red mana, would you play in your burn deck? Like, 8?
I think that
Eight.
9 is like the ambitious number.
Okay, so once we start playing the non-red one, the 8 red ones were a lock to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm way into playing burn with all 8 red Horizon Canopies.
Well, that's only if they're stuck to allied or enemy.
Oh, so I could have 16.
Yeah.
All right, game number 3 underway. Expedition Map and Curse Catcher are the plays. For Hunter, he has mulliganed to 5, and it looks like Tom has turn 3 Tron on the play. We'll see if Hunter can compete.
Hunter did take some mulligans here, so he's going to be a little bit behind there. So you've got 2 lands of Curse Catcher and just 3 cards left over in his hand. And no Spreading Seas, it looks like, on turn 2, which is really what he wants to be, as Tom is once again deploying multiple Tron lands.
Yeah, now Tom will have to respect something like Unified Will because of the Curse Catcher. And he's just going to go straight for Karn, and there is the Unified Will from Hunter. He'll counter the Planeswalker. But Tom Ross still at a very healthy 19. Make that 17 as Hunter casts the Marrow Regery.
The Unified Will was fine, but it's going to take a lot more than that to beat Natural Tron. Some pressure on Tom to have a follow-up. It looks like 2 more lands and a Sylvan Scrying in the holdings.
And here's where those lands that tap for so much mana just become unfair. Here's Oblivion Stone from Tom. Casts it by tapping 1 tower. Has enough mana to activate it as well. Chooses not to.
That's an immense sign of strength there for Tom. He didn't activate Oblivion Stone while being attacked, and in fact, didn't even activate it on Hunter's end step.
Yeah, I thought we might see an end step stone. If Tom's not using it on end step, that's a signal that he is very confident. You see Ancient Stirrings finds Walking Ballista. Quick mana count shows that Tom has 10 mana in play.
Walking Ballista can be a little bit slow against Merfolk when you are cheating on mana the way that Tron decks do. If he's activating the stone, casting Ballista for 5 or 6, it's going to be very difficult for Hunter to recover from that.
If Tom's willing to just cast a Walking Ballista for 3, he can actually play around Unified Will too. He can leave up Oblivion Stone mana as he puts it on the stack. As it turns out, Hunter swings, Tom cracks Oblivion Stone. And now, with all this mana, he'll make a 6/6 Walking Ballista. 1 card in Hunter's hand. Is it a Unified Will? It needs to be. It looks like an island.
Odds certainly against him on having that. And even if he does have it, he's got a lot more to work through.
Lord of Atlantis is the play. But once Ballista's on the table, this can be the entire game for Tom.
And no Spreading Seas just yet for Nance means no island walk for his creatures.
Sylvan Scrying from Tom Ross, floating a mana. Likely just another tower.
Could be time for a fancy land. Just pumping his Ballista up is really nice, though.
Yeah, another tower. He'll play it for the turn. He's got 1 mana floating. He has 14 total, so he'll start by making 2 more counters on the Ballista.
Still 10 mana left to work with.
8 more. So now we have a 9/9 Walking Ballista. I mean, Hunter's got to be concerned. This is almost lethal. You swing, and if Hunter doesn't chump block, he'll die. So 3 counters to take care of the First Lord.
And Tom knows that Nance doesn't have a permanent answer to Walking Ballista. Merfolk just does not work with those kinds of tools. So he's playing this very conservatively, and it will not be difficult to convert this into a win over time.
Sylvan Scrying again from Tom Ross. Gonna find the last Urza's Tower.
Just going to take his time, ramp up the Ballista to get real big. Once it's a 10, it's actually just lethal. Deal 10 damage to Nance, remove all the counters. You might even see him take a little bit more time than that as well.
Yeah, instead of the tower, it looks like he's just going to go grab Ghost Quarter. That is a removal spell for the Mutavault.
Lets him save a little bit of mana on that Walking Ballista. You know, land drop to deal with the Mutavault's better than 8 mana.
And I believe he can start attacking here. You see 7/7, 8/8, 9/9 Ballista. Okay, not lethal yet. He'll just say go. And shoot down the Lord of Atlantis. Aether Vial not going to do it for Hunter, and that's going to be game and match. So it's Tom Ross with mono green Tron. Defeating Hunter Nance, he'll move to 3-0.